Hello everyone, my name is Rayven, and welcome back to another episode of the Rainbow Veteran Podcast. So, I just got back yesterday, from DC. I spent about a week in DC talking to politicians, their teams, press conferences, did some interview work, and a different style of advocacy that I am really used to. I'm used to going to protests, doing advocacy online, making phone calls, writing letters. But for once, I was able to go to the Capitol and actually talk to politicians, their teams, and actually felt like I made some sort of impact. So I want to talk about that today, talk about what happened last week, and what some stuff that you, the listeners, can do. If you're interested in joining the organization I was with, do a little discussion about them, and just kind of just talking. And this is going to be a very, very loose episode, first and foremost. I don't actually have a script for this one. I didn't do any research. All I am doing is talking straight off the cuff, straight off my head. So some things may be fucking stupid sounding, because I actually don't have a script for me to go back to make sure I'm not saying stuff twice or just being an idiot. With that being said, I'll talk about the trip itself in a broad overview. So I joined this organization called Common Defense. They are a grassroots veteran organization that basically uses our status as veterans to get changes in the local community, and our country as a whole. They do a lot of advocacy for folks that aren't veterans, but using our status as vets to kind of put the message through. But this week in DC, we actually did advocate a lot more for vets. It's not usually the organization's bread and butter, but with the proposed cuts and everything, it was definitely something we've all felt like we should talk about. Now, one thing that I did want to make a note while we were talking to politicians' offices and some of their teams and some of the committee teams is that, one, VSOs aren't really talking about this. The legacy VSOs like VFW, the American Legion, and DAV aren't talking about the cuts really. Like they went to one hearing, but they're not talking about the cuts online. They're not talking about anything. They've been really quiet about the proposed cuts. And that might be out of fear of retaliation. We don't know. That's just a guess, but they've been really, really silent on a lot of stuff. So I felt really good to be part of an organization of veterans who are actually doing something about that. Another thing that I made note of while we were talking to teams is a lot of the GOP side, they didn't really hear much from their constituents. So if you are a listener, or if someone shared this with you, or you happen to know a veteran and you're worried about the cuts to the VA, there is one big thing, one big ask, one big favor out of anything you're going to hear from me today is please contact your politicians, local, state, and federal level, and tell them how you feel about the VA and what you feel like is being proposed is how you feel about it, and talk to them, because a lot of these red states or these Republican politicians, their offices said they weren't hearing anything from anybody. And I know a lot of parts here in Pennsylvania, it's really hard to get a hold of these Republican Congress people. Trying to get a hold of them before, and sometimes they could just be lying, or they actually aren't having people talk to them. But I know some people in their areas are actually genuinely concerned about the VA cuts. So please, please, please talk to your politicians. I'm not going to go in any order here of what days we did what, because honestly at this point it's already a jumbled mess in my brain, and I need to tell you guys this stuff before my memory fails me, because my memory is shit, which is why I usually have a script in front of me, but not this time. So I want to say first that Common Defense did do a poll nationwide for veterans between April 18th and the 24th. So I do want to talk about that before I go into the week. I just got the information on my phone. So in a survey, there is an overwhelming opposition to VA layoffs and firings across the political spectrum. It is 66% of veterans are actually against this. 95 to 5% ratio. So 95% of Democratic veterans oppose the VA cuts. Independent vets at a 69 to 22%. So net 47 oppose it, and Republican veterans at a net negative 13. I don't really know how to read these. These are statistics. I never took statistics, so if you're a math nerd, if you're Air Force, I will also be putting the photo on my Instagram page. So if you are interested, take a look at that. I'm just going to use the big numbers here because that's a little easier for my brain. Veterans broadly support and trust the VA with a 79% rate. There apparently includes 84% of self-identified somewhat conservative and 60% of self-identified very conservative veterans. So even the conservative veterans are very, very supportive and trusting of our VA system. And there's major opposition. So it says at a negative 21%. So I'm assuming that hang on, I gotta do math here. 79% of veterans support or oppose, I should say, that 79% of veterans oppose the cuts and firings across all federal jobs. Again, I can't read because it says only 41% of veterans support the DOJ firings across the federal government, and while 53% oppose it. Once they learned that 1/3 of federal workers are veterans, support among veterans for firing federal workers declines even further, increasing into 57% opposing. So that's really good. And then there's some statistics here. How nearly half of all VA patients are 65 and older, with Vietnam-era veterans making up the largest amount right now, which is not a surprise. 90% of veteran patients are male, while 80% identify as non-Hispanic white. And due to their military service, veteran affairs patients experience chronic disease at much higher rates than their peers. So that's a page that we kept handing out to these politicians, and one of them too. We did a lot more specific stuff, but we gave that to every politician that we talked to kind of give them that number, that statistic, because a lot of them were saying we're not seeing anything, we're not hearing anything. So it was really rough. So now I'm going to kind of go into the week. So there was a couple of teams we broke down into. There was the ones that were talking to politicians and their offices. So there was we went all the way from Alpha to Foxtrot. I was part of Delta. And then there was a group that was bird dogging. And if you saw the video where there was a group of vets following Mike Bosch of the House VA committee and basically asking them about why he's supporting the cuts or propose or the goal, as Collins kept saying in the hearing, which I will get to. That is bird dog. They're basically trying to find politicians and kind of catch them off guard to ask them questions to make sure that the information that they are talking about in the hearings match what they would say out in the world. Because the goal is basically to create a wedge between Musk and Trump versus a lot of these politicians, because if we can get that wedge through, it definitely helps us veterans, because a lot of people are against the cuts, and even the Heritage Foundation was like, hey, we shouldn't do that, and guess what? They're doing it. So yeah, it's definitely something that I feel like is going to be big. So we met, first couple of days we met with, my team met with a few Republican offices, some names that I kind of remember. There was Mark Sheeney, who I can't remember what state he's from. Let me actually look that up. Oh, that should be over there. Mark Sheeney. I do remember he is a former Navy SEAL, who is now a... Is this him? Minnesota? No. Okay. I will look this up while I'm talking. But anyway, former Navy SEAL, turned politician, very, very MAGA. His office was like, well, we're not really for the cuts, but we're going to go along with what this administration and what Trump, Elon, and Collins are trying, but we're not really for it. And I'm like, how can you be not for it, but then just let it happen? Like, that's ridiculous. We talked to one of the members of the Senate VA committee, or SVAC. Was it Bill Cassidy from Louisiana? It's something Cassidy from Louisiana. His office is proposing like an AI thing to streamline it. And actually, his team, we actually talked to like one of the higher ones. So he did really good because he did a lot of politics stuff. So he kind of like wasted our time and tried to get us like, oh, you have an appointment, but I know you guys are vets. I'm just trying to get you out of here and get the meeting done as soon as I can. And so that was rough because he was basically just like, yeah. And I'm like, Cassidy has this proposed bill. I want to talk about that because he kept, every time we said something and then we talked about the bill, he kept conflating what we were saying about healthcare and the bill, which would affect VBA or benefits, as one, and wasting our time with that. And I had to interrupt him a few times because I'm like, you're not fucking listening to what I am goddamn saying. I can't remember the bill's name or number, but Cassidy has a bill that is going to, if you ever tried applying for a job through Indeed, it is going to be the same basic thing. And he was like, oh, but there's a person at the end. I'm like, okay, but the system, the reason why we don't want this to be used with AI, yeah, it could theoretically streamline it, but it also is going to make a lot of vets get denied a lot more often because of how nuanced some of this stuff is. And that is an issue we don't want veterans facing because a lot of our healthcare is fucking nuance. So if there's not the right buzzwords or triggers or, you know, the things for the system to pick up and send to that person at the end, how are we going to know that this person at the end with the rating system is actually going to get that information? And then on the flip side, as a lot of people know how to now mess with Indeed's system, there's going to be veterans that are going to just happen to make their stuff sound exactly the way the system needs it to and get that rating, which is a double-edged sword, right? We want to make sure that we're taking care of the veterans who need it, but also making sure that no one's abusing the system. But if we use AI, that's going to make it easier to be abused. And it was actually at this point, too, I do want to make a point that, like, with Cassidy's team, every time we met with a politician's team or a politician, we shared our story. And with the Republican side, I was very hesitant to share my full story, but I was able to do it with this politician from Cassidy's team because I felt like he wasn't quite getting it. Because Cassidy, even in the Senate hearing, was like, these cuts, these Democrats complaining about these cuts, it's just fear-mongering. So I wanted to nail it. So I'm going, and I wanted to drive it home. So I'm going to tell my full story here. And I'm going to tell it the full way, and the way that I feel like not a lot of people are realizing. Because I rely on the VA. So here we go, and trigger warning because it's kind of fucked up. Like my story is. I am an MST survivor. If you don't know what that is, it stands for military sexual assault, or military sexual trauma. I survived assault from 3 shipmates of mine, and it took me years to figure out where my mental health issues were coming from. And I thought after everything happened, I thought, oh, I'm fine. I just brushed it off. I stopped it before it got too far. And I was able to push on. But the problem is when I got out, I didn't have that constant distraction anymore. And I had to live with it. And I had PTSD for years that was undiagnosed. And if it wasn't for the VA, I wouldn't even know. Because I went in, I knew I had depression, I knew I had anxiety. And so I had a consultation with the trauma team, just the regular health team at first, the mental health care team, at my local VA. And they even asked me, have I ever had any issues with assault? And I said, yes. And we did a dive into it. And they recommended me to the trauma team. And I was getting care for my assault that I didn't realize for 10 fucking years was the reason I had so many issues with my mental health. 10 fucking years. Because every time, and I went to civilians, I went to civilian therapists, and none of them even had it as a thought to ask that could be potentially it. And that's sad in itself, but I am, as a lot of my listeners know, I am an LGBT veteran. I am a pansexual trans woman vet. I didn't transition until years after the military, but when I was in, I identified as a bisexual man. And during that time, my assaulters used my sexual orientation as a weapon. So my trauma is linked to my orientation. And because of that, and that's little t trauma specifically there, that's part of the big T trauma of MST, I had to go to a very specific therapist who focused on LGBT veterans and MST-based PTSD. And I recently lost him because him and his office got cease and desist letters from the VA because helping LGBT veterans goes against the anti-DEI executive order that Trump signed. And Collins is allowing it to happen. I lost a group therapy specifically for LGBT veterans because of the small t trauma that we have serving before, during, and after Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And to have that ripped away was hard. Luckily, my hospital figured out a Band-Aid solution, apparently, and made a new group, but I don't feel like going back to it because I'm trying so hard not to cry right now, because I can't keep opening up these wounds just to have my care ripped away again. That's why I haven't gone to another therapist. It's because, yes, I'm kind of okay. But for me to go to another therapist and just to have the threat of, hey, you just opened this wound to a new person, going into details about what happened and talking about it and talking about your trauma and actually bringing up the fact that you were assaulted. Like, even right now, that wound hurts, but I talked about it so much this past week with varying levels of details that, like, me finally being this open even hurts. Sorry, I'm trying not to cry on the podcast, but, like, it's rough. It's fucking rough. And for me to just have to worry about if I start opening this bag of worms with this new therapist and she has the same cease and desist that my previous therapist had, she is on the chopping block to be fired next. And that is the worst fucking thing to have to go through. We're already losing care for veterans. And sharing my story with these politicians, I feel like gives a bit more of a human dynamic to the threat of what's going on. Because if I'm already experiencing this as a minority veteran, because we all know that this administration hates minorities and minority veterans, that if I'm experiencing this, what is it going to be like for all veterans, the whole shebang, the majority of veterans, when we cut like a fifth of the force? And that's ballpark, because like their goal is 83,000 roughly, or 15%. But like still, and it was rough. And like we met with, it was night and day after we got from like Cassidy's office, and then I don't remember if it was the same day or the next day, we went to Rashida Talib's to Bill. I'm so sorry, I can't remember the name. That when I was there and I told my story and I was able to talk about the fact that I'm an LGBT veteran and that I was able to talk about my trauma, talk about everything that happened, and you could see a lot of these people were empathetic. Some people were crying, and like a lot of people, even my fellow vets who I was with, like Delta group, I was with them, and the entire days we were talking to the GOP, I was talking about just the bare bones. But the moment I talked about that, it was tied with my orientation, I saw some of them look at me and just go, fuck. Because it is such a shitty thing to fucking have to go through. And a lot of these politicians just don't fucking care. They don't. And that's the sad thing, is that over the last 20, 30 years, we've seen time and time again that the Republicans are not standing with us. They like to wrap themselves in the flag and say, I stand for veterans, but their actions do not meet their fucking words. And I was fortunate enough that the last day of us actually doing stuff, I was able to meet with my congressman's office. I actually got to meet with his, I think technically he is the security advisor, but he covers the VA stuff for my congressman. also a fellow vet, and my congressman is a fellow vet as well. And the three of us were Navy vets. So I was able to talk to him. I was fortunate enough that I went to Alpha, and then out of that Alpha, most of them had to leave for flights home. So it was just me and one staffer for Common Defense. And it was great because I was able to get a one-on-one and felt really seen and able to now try getting a better appointment with my congressman here back home outside of DC. And my congressman has been doing a lot to fight for us. But there's a lot of other stuff I feel like I have to talk to him, and I feel like he's been dropping the ball a bit. But it's just rough. It is rough because this needs to happen, and I need to share my story. And my fellow vets also need to share their stories and go through the VA. And I'm not saying the VA is great. The VA has some growing pains, but there's a reason for it. I'm getting ahead of myself, but I will talk about that. And also on the last day, I actually got to talk to some of the HVAC, the House Veteran Affairs Committee's staffers. So not the actual politicians, but the staffers that work with the politicians. And for the first time of beyond just talking about my story and telling how we all like really care for the VA and how the VA works and the double-edged sword that is community care, I was able to talk shop with these staffers. And I feel like that's where I did, beyond just sharing my story and how the VA actually helps me as a minority veteran, the fact that I was able to talk shop with these staffers, I feel like did a huge impact, because not only was I like, hey, here's what you could do because you have a meeting here soon, an actual House committee hearing for Collins here soon. I want to make sure you guys talked about it. So I brought up the study of how community care ate a lot of the 2023 fiscal year's budget for the VA because we aren't investing in the VAs themselves. One person I was with, I'm not sure if she's okay with me sharing her name on the podcast, so I'm just going to refer to her as H. H, also a Navy veteran, lives in... I don't want to dox her, but she lives in an area where I'm very familiar with because I grew up on the other side of the river from her. So the VA, for that part of the state, the VA was on my side of the river. And it was easy for my pawpaw, my grandfather, to go to that VA. But people on her side of the river have to go through traffic. And it could be just sitting an hour in traffic by itself getting to that VA hospital. So, under the Biden administration, it was built. I don't know if it was started and funded by the Biden administration. I just know it was built under that administration. There was a new one made, way closer, trying to ease up some of that burden for the one that was on my papa's side of the river. Now, because I don't live in that state anymore. But it was really nice to hear. But the problem is, because of the hiring freezes, because all this stuff with the budgets and everything, it's a quarter staff and probably even less funded. So they don't have all the resources. So either they're having to, the budget it's going to have to go to community care, or they're going to still have to drive to the other facility. And that is such a huge issue. And that's why I call community care a double-edged sword, because it's great, but we're not building new facilities. We're not expanding new facilities. We're not making sure that we're able to, there's a healthcare shortage. Sure. But a lot of these doctors don't work at the VA for the money because they get shit money at the VA. They do it to help veterans. And a lot of them are also veterans, or their family was veterans. So if we can create better facilities and everything and throw more money at the VA itself, then this will be better. And this is this is going to be a good segue into the SVAC hearing, because Collins really pissed me off. And I'm I'm going to bring up Colin's testimony here, but it was really, really shitty. And I also have my notes that I wrote, because it was real shit. Is this the correct one? Yes. Okay. So basically, before I read it, Collins, you could tell he was he was a great politician, as in he knows how to do political speak, i.e., fucking talk out of his ass. So here's his actual statement. Chairman Morin, ranking members, Blumenthal, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the state of the Department of Veteran Affairs. Since becoming VA Secretary, I've met many men and women who show up to work every day at the department with a deep dedication to our mission, delivering healthcare and benefits to millions of veterans who served our nation. They have my sincere thanks, and I can't wait to meet more of them in the months ahead. In the same period, I've come to learn what many of you in this committee also realize is the VA needs reform. We must do a better job delivering timely care to veterans, getting to yes so veterans can get benefits that they've earned, and making sure the money Congress appropriates to the VA is not diverted to non-mission critical or even wasteful program. So I do want to bring that up first, because I talked about this on my TikTok, is he likes to talk about wasteful spending and non-mission critical doctors. The entire time he was in that fucking committee, one of the many things he kept going back to was, we have doctors who are not in offices seeing patients. There's a fucking reason for that. We have doctors and healthcare professionals who are doing R&D healthcare. And what I mean by that is, the VA, like I said before, the VA is really great at taking care of veterans. The VA is the ones that helped push evolutions in prosthetics. The VA are the ones that helped with PTSD and trying to get that fixed and taken care of. The VA is looking at psychedelic therapy for those who have been affected by PTSD and other mental health issues. And we cannot do that without doctors who are not actively seeing patients, trying to figure out which forms of medication work, like psilocybin, ketamine, ayahuasca, cannabis, whatever. We can't know how these things are going to do if there is doctors having to see patients at a certain rate every day. These doctors need to be able to see patients in their research, see how it is helping them. But they can't do that by seeing patients every day. They have to do the research. They have to do the studies. And that's who those doctors who are not actively seeing patients every day are. And that is something I don't think Collins is being genuine with. Coming back to his testimony, in the old days, way back in 2024, like it wasn't fucking 5 or 6 months ago, discussions in Congress about the need to reform VA were often just a thinly veiled request for more employees. I'll get in that in a second. But the department's history shows that more employees to the system doesn't automatically mean better results. The Biden's administration record is a perfect example. During those 4 years, the VA failed to address nearly all of its serious problems, such as benefit backlogs, rising healthcare wait times. The numbers speak for themselves. The number of VA employees grew by more than 52,000 full-time equivalents from fiscal year 21 for fiscal year 24. Did all those extra people make things better for veterans? No. In fact, VA's direct care performance actually got worse. Wait times primary care rose from 15.7 to 24.3 days. Wait times for mental health care rose from 14.7 to 20.4 days. Wait times for specialty care rose from 24 to 38 days. And the VA's disability compensation benefit claims backlog increased under Biden with no numbers. I want to make that clear. He never brought numbers out on that. Even though he supposedly had all these other numbers, never could find numbers for that. And I want to fucking talk about that. And Senator Duckworth did bring up that we brought in hundreds, if not millions, of new veterans to the VA under the PACT Act, but we didn't increase enough to take care of those veterans. And Collins's counter was, yeah, but we're losing 40 or 400,000 veterans a year. But also on the flip side, we're gaining 200,000 veterans every year to the VA. So out of 16 million veterans, we're currently at 9 million veterans, which means veterans who are still trying to get service connected, who are still trying to go to the VA or realize that they have an issue that wasn't realized, like me, they're coming to the VA still. So they're still increasing and increasing, offsetting that lowering and lowering. So his whole there's veterans dying counter argument to the rate isn't genuine. He's being so disingenuous the entire fucking hour, 2.5 hour range, I can't remember at this point, of that fucking hearing. It was a shit show. And it was honestly a shit show, and it pisses me off so much. So, I have the numbers. Here, and I actually want to talk about that because these are rough numbers here, but I am going to talk about it. So, there are roughly 9.1 million veterans in the VA healthcare system. Not benefit side, but at least the healthcare side, right? For the healthcare, this is all we're talking about right now because that's what the proposed cuts are for. There are roughly 470-ish thousand employees, where about 370 of those are healthcare professionals. So you have roughly 100,000 support staff. That's the janitors to make sure the hospital's clean. That's the maintenance crews who make sure the building is fine. There's the cooks who feed those who work, and like the residents, the community care folks who and I say community care, not like the going out and getting hospital, but like the older vets who can't take care of themselves, so they live at the VA hospital. There's a term for that, and all I can think of was community care, but that's not it. There's those staff. Those are all important people, and those are the ones who are being looked at getting cut because of administrative and people not doing their job, as Collins fucking called it. So I do want to bring up a point that a fellow veteran brought up. The Air Force only has 4% pilots. Out of the entire Air Force, only 4% of them are pilots. The other 96% are support teams for those pilots. They're refuelers, they're maintenance crews, they're administrative roles. They're people who make sure people are like going to certain locations correctly. There's people who make sure that all of them are fed. That is the military. Everyone always says like, oh, you're a POG, you're a POG, you're a POG, or however fuck you pronounce it. You're like person other than grunt. Yeah, because there's so much shit that goes into making sure that your infantry grunt ass is going to be safe and going to be okay. One guy brought it up really well that was on my team, that there was 1 in 8 support members for every 1 infantryman in the Army. And that's what we need. We need like a 1 in 10 VA employees for every 1 veteran. But there's the counter argument that Collins and a lot of other politicians like fucking Tuberville or Tillis said, that the VA is not a federal employment center. It is a way to take care of veterans. How the fuck are you going to do that when you don't have anybody employed? Because you already cut the volunteer programs, especially with the new thing where, like, no loan vet program. I can't remember what it's called, but, like, people can make sure and constantly check on a veteran. I tried getting into that, and guess what? I can't, because the fucking volunteer system is still fucked over. But no. We just want an entire fucking volunteer force for the VA? That's not gonna fucking work. People need to be able to put food on their goddamn table and pay for their homes or rent or whatever. But we still need to support. But here's the thing. Is with those numbers I gave you, that means that we have 19 vets per every single employee in the VA health system. That means per every healthcare professional, they have to focus on 24 veterans. That's where the inefficiency is coming from, because we don't have enough employees to actually look at the veterans and be able to go through it. I looked up another doctor talking about in the civilian world how many patients him and his team go through, and it is, for the year, 5 to 8 on average, maybe 10 depending if it's a big city area. But that is how much one doctor goes through, not 20 fucking 4. That is ridiculous, because we don't have the staff. And Collins kept going through, and he's probably going to bring it up more in this speech here, but I want to talk about it now, is we threw a bunch of money at the VA. It didn't help. You want to know why it didn't help? Because, like I said earlier, community care. Community care is great if you live hours away from a VA hospital. It is great. I understand it. But a lot of vets still drive those 2 hours sometimes in those rural states to go to their VA hospital, because hospitals in rural parts of the country aren't great either, and they don't know how to treat vets. But even if they were good, because like the VA, every hospital is different. They all have their ups and downs. That's where a lot of the money's going. Like I said on my last episode, talking about the privatizing of the VA, the money that was allocated for the VA went to mostly community care, because they have to pay, like, insurances to have veterans taken care of. I'll use a great analogy. Think of Costco hot dogs, right? If Costco decided we're going to continue to have someone else make our hot dogs, right? That would have to increase the price of hot dogs. The CEO said, no, we're not increasing the price of the goddamn hot dogs. If you do that, I'll kill you. Literal quote. So what Costco figured out was it was cheaper for them to make their own hot dogs. They bought the recipe from the company they were working with and opened a factory, and now they make their own hot dogs. That's the VA. The VA is the insurance and the hospital, and that's why we can keep it so cheap, because the VA is its own hot dog manufacturer. It's a dumb analogy. I know. But it's the only way I feel like I can process that to people, because if we are paying for other hospitals to take care of our vets, they are going to charge the government the same fucking way they charge private insurance, which means that a fucking Tylenol in the emergency room is a fucking $500 price tag. Where if we do it ourselves, we're just doing it like regular pharmacies are paying for those prescriptions. So they're just going to be a very low cost still. And this is the issue with the VA being the way it is under Collins and the proposed cuts. He continues with something has to change, and it is up to us to make that change. Under President Trump, we are working to solve problems that have persisted at the VA for decades. No, the fuck you're not. Our goal is to create a department that works better for veterans, family, caregivers, and survivors that were served. Then why the fuck did you get rid of the volunteers? I've never been shy when it comes to addressing tough issues head on, and I won't ignore the elephant in the room here today. As everyone here is aware, we're conducting a thorough review of the department's structure and staffing across the enterprise. Enterprise, and I hate that he said enterprise, because that's treating it like a business, like, oh, the VA's hemorrhaging money. Yeah, that's the fucking government. When you have programs that take care of people, like the VA, you know, the veterans who were, and everyone says sacred promise, contractually obligated, because when we signed up to sign away part of our rights and fucking potentially die, that the VA would take care of us. The government, through the VA, would take care of us if our health was not the same as it was when we got in, when we raised our right hand. That sacred promise is also a fucking contract. And that's the thing, is they just don't want to fucking have billionaires be taxed. That's the whole Heritage Foundation's fucking goal, is make it easier for the rich. And that's bullshit, because everyone goes, well, the VA used to be great when, like, my papa was in and everything was great back in the day. Yeah, the reason why it was great back in the day is because we had, before Reagan, some of the biggest taxes on fucking millionaires. The elite paid their fair share. Here we go. Back to it. As I've said countless times, this review is aimed at finding ways to improve care and benefits for veterans without cutting care and benefits for veterans. Yeah, you're already fucking cutting care. Fuck off. Our goal is to increase productivity and efficiency, eliminate waste and bureaucracy, and improve the delivery of health care and benefits to veterans. We're going to maintain the VA's mission-essential jobs like doctors, nurses, and claim processors while phasing out non-essential roles like interior designers and DEI offices. He kept harping on the fucking interior designer bullshit. And I think his chaplain officer ass does not know what interior designers do for medical facilities, because I think he's just going, oh, they put plants here, they put this there, they make sure that the feng shui is great. No, there's a reason why they do this, and it stems from psychology. Medical interior designers are the same people who figured out that seafoam goddamn green helps with sailors who live in submarines won't go as batshitty, because seafoam green apparently does something in a psychological sense that makes some mariners not go crazy, being thousands of feet under the water. Okay, that's what hospital medical interior designers do. They make sure that places that are, if you go into one area that's like mostly beds and everything, and like you're healing, there's a little bit of a calming, homey kind of vibe, right? But when you go to the psych side of a hospital, especially in the VA, it's a lot more open. It's not as like claustrophobic. Not everything is coming in at you. That has a psychological effect, and that's what those probably, 10, 20 interior designers for the entire VA system do? Because you don't need a lot, because right now we're not fucking building enough VA hospitals to require more than 10 or 20. But you kept using that as a way to justify the cuts because you're being disingenuous. And I had to bite my tongue the entire time I was in that hearing. So you guys are getting my pent-up rage and aggression, and I'm sorry for that. That I kept myself from going and exploding during that hearing because I was trying to be respectful. But Collins, you don't get that same respect from me one-on-one, you fucking Blue Falcon. Where was I in this stupid fucking bullshit? Oh, here we go. The savings we achieve will be redirected to VA healthcare and benefits. Our goal is to ensure we have employees where they are needed, cut unnecessary overhead, and strategically reduce staff to ensure the VA's budget is mostly going directly to veterans. We will accomplish this without making cuts to healthcare or benefits to veterans or VA beneficiaries. Year after year, calls for VA reform come from every corner. Lawmakers, the media, watchdogs like Inspector Generals of the Government Accountability Office, veteran service organizations, and including veterans across the country. No, they're fucking not. That was a straight up goddamn lie. We want the system to get better, but you're proposing is something that we don't even want. Even the legacy VSOs, who have been generally quiet on this, called you the fuck out. This year, finally, we have embraced on a historic effort to reform the VA. We've been empathetic that we won't be cutting benefits in healthcare, only improving them, and we're engaging career subject matter experts, senior executives, and political leadership to restructure the department so it works better for veterans. Yet you're trying to push doctors who don't see patients every day, like the fucking R&D doctors who are trying to make our care fucking better, not do their goddamn job. While we were... wait, where am I? We are doing what literally all VA stakeholders agree needs to be done. Yeah, stakeholders, that's fucking great. We're not a fucking business. This is not a business. Stop treating it like one. So what has the reaction been? We've been met with a barrage of false rumors, innuendos, disinformation, and speculation implying we're firing doctors and nurses, forcing staff to work in closets and showers, and that there is chaos across the department. Because there already fucking is. And here's the thing. The entire time they were talking in the committee, everyone was saying this 83,000 or 15%. And Collins kept saying, well, you guys are jumping at shadows. It's just a goal. It's just a goal. It's just a goal. If you have a goal, that means that is what you're trying to get at. So you're trying to go to 15%, or as you said, Collins, from 2024 to 2019's staff leveling. Even though we added about 1 million other fucking vets since then. We want to reduce the amount we have. Okay, that makes sense. So, you're lying about the inefficiency, or you're lying trying to say it's we're making it more efficient when you're not. You're trying to force doctors to see patients when their work does other stuff. You're trying to make doctors do administrative work because you're going to cut administrative roles. Let's see, where was the last part of this? Oh, yeah, and the fact that, like, there's already people losing their therapists. Like, you just cut a bunch of people at the beginning of the year willy-nilly under probation period. Some people who changed positions got a promotion and was put in a probationary status that have been 20-year-long VA employees. And you just fired them. No cause, just a chainsaw or a hatchet. That is not VA reform. That is basically just trying to shut us down so we have to go to community care. And that doesn't fucking work. I can't read the rest of this because it's just him spouting the same bullshit over and over again in his testimony. If you want a copy of that, I will put a link to the hearing page in the show notes so you can read it, because it was fucking bullshit. And does the VA need reformed? Yes. But instead of trying to while we're trying to help these rural VAs with community care and have them be like, hey, we know that this Band-Aid solution is temporary. Let's make sure that we add even more funds so the community care isn't draining everything, so we can fix the VA, so we can make sure that the VA is not going to be up for sale, that it's not going to be privatized, but can either outpace the community care and we can expand so there's more than a small handful of VAs in the area. I actually had a note. Where is it? Because one of the guys we were talking to in his office, their VA is actually expecting closures. There's about to have 10 VA facility closures in this one guy's district. Because the money's going to community care. We can't keep up with that. That H's new VA hospital, that's probably going to be up for close here soon. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it's aggravating. But I don't want to spend too long on Collins's SVAC. I am going to watch the HVAC or the House Committee hearing that's supposed to be next week, if it's still going to be a thing. I am going to talk about that and watch that as well. Oosa. I know I just got really heated for a bit, but that entire hearing pissed me the fuck off. But I want to end this because I want to talk about common defense. And that's a big thing I want to talk about before I end the episode, because we are at an hour, almost an hour, so I don't want to go too far over the time. But if you are a veteran, if you're tired of seeing stuff like this continue, if you're tired of seeing things affect your community, join us here at Common Defense. This last week, as a little audio version of a letter to an editor kind of deal, this past week was amazing. Yes, I did get really, really frustrated with the Senate hearing. But that was overshadowed, I feel like, by all the work we did. We talked to politicians. We gave them numbers. We need you guys. If you're concerned about these cuts or see issues with the VA or see stuff that may be happening with these proposed cuts, talk to your politicians, please. I beg you. Please. If you want to do some boots on the ground work, if you want to have some tools to help, if you want to get involved, please join Common Defense. I'm very grateful that they helped me get out to DC, and I was able to do what I was able to do what I could do with them. And it was very empowering, because I was able to actually do more than just behind a computer screen, which I do most of my advocating through, or a phone. And it was really great. I was able to interact with veterans across multiple states and hear all of our stories. And I may do a follow-up on this. The two I carpooled with who live in my area, they may be my first guests. Or the guy who started Common Defense, Jose, who currently is fighting pancreatic cancer, I want to say. He has cancer in his pancreas. And the VA helped him. He came in for a stomach pain. They checked it out. They figured out way faster, because I've seen what the private doctors have done with cancer. Found out and then got him, under the knife relatively fucking fast. I would say exceptionally fucking fast if he went to the civilian side. He's going through chemo right now, but he's still fighting. He is going through chemo, and he's still fighting for our communities and our fellow veterans. I just have so much respect for Jose, and I do want him on the show. I do have his number, and I may bring him on to talk shop about Common Defense. But if you're interested, the website is commondefense.us. They talk about their history and everything. I'm also going to quickly, if you have been on my Instagram or my Twitter, you may have seen the QR code for this, but I also put both their main site and their donate page in the show notes. If you can, if you're not a veteran, but you are a listener, especially on the LGBT side, if you guys could do me, or ally side, please donate to them. It's just their commondefense.us/donate, because we do a lot of good work. For Pride this year, I'm going a little behind the scenes look, I guess. I think I'm going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission on this. I saw, like the movie Robots, I saw a need, I fill a need. We have Black veteran caucuses, Latinx veteran caucuses, women veteran caucuses, a lot of different caucuses within common defense going on for like issues for not only the veterans but also the communities we are a part of without the veteran title. There wasn't an LGBT one. So for months I pushed my point of contact here in PA. She pushed the higher ups, and now we have the early stages of an LGBT veteran caucus. And I am the co-chair, one of the co-chairs for it. Going this Pride, we're going to be part of Minneapolis Pride. We're going to talk in the area, show who we are, and take part of a huge Pride event. I'm going to be in the march, and I feel like it's going to be really good because not only is my veteran community under attack, but my LGBTQIA plus community is under attack, and that is why I started this goddamn podcast, and I saw it for years before, and that's why I started my online presence as the Rainbow Veteran. If you can't show up to that Pride event to talk to us, if you want to get involved somehow, if you're an LGBT veteran and you want to get involved with something like this, please come to the Common Defense team, and I will work with you. I will make sure that you're taken care of, and I will help make sure you have the tools, even if you're not in my state, that you have the tools to be taken care of, because these other VSOs aren't doing shit for us. If you are looking to donate, there are small increments to big increments, but donate what you can. If you can't, please spread the word about Common Defense and the donation page, because it takes a lot to do what we just did. It took a lot of funds, it took a lot of logistics, and I am so grateful for everybody that was involved to get my ass on a 4-hour drive from here in Pittsburgh to DC and being able to put us up in Noma, like the heart of DC, and transport us to each of these meetings and everything. It does a lot. And if you can't get out to these things, please join me meeting with your local politician, meeting with your congressman, meeting with your senators, meeting with your state level congressmen and senators, and try to push them to take care of not only us vets, but our fellow Americans who live next door to us. Regardless of their political affiliation, we all need to make sure that we are okay. And like I said on this podcast before, you don't have to treat those MAGA folks with respect. But I don't want any of us to let them fall and get hurt just because of their hatred. Treat them with love, not hate. And I'm not saying don't let them just bully you into submission and let them just hit on you, all, like smack you around all the time either. No, there is a time for that, to stand up to that. But you're all adults. Just do what you think is right. So I don't really have a conclusion for this, just because it is what it is. So I'm just going to sign off by saying thank you all for listening. Thank you all for interacting. Thank you to Common Defense for letting me be able to take part of such a, to me, humongous and important event, and having the ability to sit in that hearing and be able to talk to the committee staffers and being able to make these connections with other politicians and trying to be a force of good. To the Bird Dog team, I just want to give you all a good old hoo-yah! Because you guys fucking nailed it. I'm trying to be a little quiet. My partner's taking a nap. I don't know how well that's going on right now, but I'm just going to sign off by saying thank you all. And once again, my name is Rayven. I am the Rainbow Veteran. Please, everyone, be safe. Stay safe. Stay vigilant. And stay hydrated. Hey everybody, it's Rayven here. Before we hit the outro song, I do want to make this little off the top of my head ad here for Trans Hope United. Trans Hope United is a trans-focused podcast group that I joined and helped formed with other podcasters to talk about and share our stories with each other and our audiences. Groups that we have right now is the Brat podcast, or Ben and Robin are trans, Valentine's Voice, sorry, podcast, and just other podcasts that we're slowly getting into the fold here to try and spread awareness about each other's shows and just kind of show that, hey, the transgender community, even with everything going on, is standing together and standing firm, that no matter what happens, we are here. And so I do want to make this, and I'm going to add this until we get a official ad that we're in hopes of working on to talk about. But I am going to add these at the tail end of every episode to kind of talk about it and just have you guys listen. So I will try to remember to add them to the show notes in every episode. But if you just look up Trans Hope United and look at all the podcasts under that user name in different spots on like Spotify or any podcast website, you'll kind of see them there, especially on Spotify. So definitely go check them out. And I'll see you all later.